write stuff, I podcast, I illustrate. Occasionally, I'm a rock star, and some other random things. I'm going a little harder now, normal to be as funny because my guest is got one of the driest sense of humor I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. It is Ron. I hope I got this right. Ron L. Lahr.
Yes, exactly so.
Yeah. So Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yay! Looking forward to it. So, you like I said, my impression of you is that you have a very dry wit that sometimes your wife probably wants to punch you for.
Yeah, that is amazingly perceptive. The other thing I would add is that apparently my sense of humor wears on wives, I would say. I was married for 15 years the first time, and that was, yeah, I was not funny to her by the end. And I've been married to that was my practice wife or training wife.
Okay.
My current, or I'm supposed to call her forever wife for public relations reasons. But my current wife, we've been together 13 years, so I'm not very funny to her, but I still have a couple years, I think, before it's over.
Well, I hope it's not over.
Me too. I didn't choose to end the first marriage either. Yeah. It's not all up to me.
You never know. Like sometimes with a marriage, right? It's sometimes it's just not. It's not like just meant to be, and both parties come to that realization, right? Sometimes
that is a great point. As soon as she told me she wanted a divorce, I also came to the realization that we were going to be divorced.
Yeah.
So, in fact, it was kind of funny. So she had left to go stay with her mom, and she came to the house, and I said, you got to tell me what's going on. Are we going to go to counseling, or are we going to, be back together? Are we going to get divorced? What's on? I mean, you're kind of leaving me in limbo here. And she's like, I want a divorce. No counseling, nothing. I just want a divorce. And I said, okay. And she started crying. So I'm comforting her. I'm like, oh, don't worry. People get divorced all the time. It's not the end of your life, not the end of my life. And I'm like, what a ripoff. She's dumping my ass, and I got to comfort her.
Well, okay, so it's weird. I'm defending your first wife. Jesus, this is weird. Okay, let's go there. Let's go there.
I wrote a book about it.
Yeah, it would be like, it would be like for her. I mean, kudos to her. In one sense, at least she told you. At least she decided. I mean, at least she decided for herself that she needed to walk away. And I realized how much I hurt because I still feel like this is the impression I get here, and maybe I'm wrong. She cared about you still. She really, really did care about you. It was just one of those. She just couldn't do it anymore, and that's fair, right?
Yeah. It sucks. We're still friends. We get along great. But so at the time I was working with a vendor, and we talk on Monday morning. This was like Friday night. So Monday morning we're talking, and I had a client that was potentially going to buy expensive software from this guy. And he's like, how are you today? And I said, I'm getting divorced. I mean, it's like out of the blue. I'm quite surprised. And he starts crying because he's separated from his wife, and it's a mess. And after it was over, I'm like, that is not going to be me, right? I'm not going to let this destroy my life. I'm going to just start dating right away and just be fine with it. So I joined an online dating service, and I went on my first date 3 weeks after the Friday that my still wife had told me she wanted a divorce. And I had to fly to San Diego to meet with this client. And I'm driving, and I called my ex because she was watching the kids, and I said, hey, I need you to watch the kids on this particular day because I have a date. And she goes, I don't approve of that. I'm like, what? She says, well, I think you should not date for a year out of respect for the marriage. And I said, I respected the marriage by staying married. So no, I'm going to go out. And one of us hung up on the other. I don't remember who, but we didn't talk for 3 days. And then she finally called me back and said, you're right. I don't have any claim on you anymore. So it was very odd. She didn't want to be married to me, but she also didn't want me to date anybody.
Well, it's the fact that you're letting go. I've been on the outside of that where I have ended up dating a friend of. I'm friends with both of them, and after they have gone through their separation, and it's an awkward spot because you still get that sense of there's a connection there, but right, and like I said, it's that letting go part. Like you were right, like you were free to do whatever you want. 3 weeks is impressive, right? It is impressive. I mean, not an uncommon response to that situation either, though. People usually grieve a bunch of different ways when they go through a separation because there's, I think, a grief process. No matter how quickly it is, there's still some manner of grief you go through. But one way is people start, life goes on, and you got to move on, and you got to go forward. And it sounds like that was what your intention was. And your first wife was still like probably a more traditional form of agreement. Take some time, kind of figure out who she is and what she wanted to be, and you're like, oh fuck it, I'm just gonna go date.
Do you want to know the name of the book I wrote?
Yes.
About this, it's called "You're as Stupid as You Are Fat: How to Talk to Women."
Yeah. Does it work?
Well, I didn't publish it under my own name, although I'm going to very soon. That's what I was talking to Amazon, to KDP about. I'm going to rewrite it, take a little of the edge off. It's a little rough.
Yeah.
There's the language and the crudity is a little strong.
Yeah.
But I have decided I'm going to publish it under my own name now. So
there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you are how do I put this? You made a decision, and honestly, you got a lot of experience. Like this, you're on your second marriage, and at least so far, it's successful. I mean, 13 years is not. So, I mean, you've definitely got some of your shit figured out for sure.
Oh, I think I'm a much better husband now. I mean, we got my practice wife. We got married when I was, a kid. I mean, we were very young, and so we kind of grew up together. And we'd known each other for years before then, but so I did very much take things for granted. I thought about being a good father, but I never really thought much about being a good husband. And now I certainly try to do that.
Yeah. So, well, it's. I think there's a balance. Like, there's definitely a balance to it where you. Again, I'm speaking just like I dated. I've never really gotten married. If my dad has my way his way, I'll never get married because he's like for him it ended very terribly. But I mean, at this point in my life, like I'm at that point. I'm old enough where it's like if he doesn't come my way, I know it's enough that I have missed out on something I think really special. But at the same time, it doesn't define my life either at this point in my life, right? So, me personally, I'm kind of hoping like maybe someone will be crazy enough down the road. But I also realize that for me, it can't define your life. I find when you chase something that going for a great relationship is a great goal for anybody, no matter what the relationship looks like. But to completely live and die by that, I think has killed more relationships than just about anything else I know.
Well, my wife is a great cook and baker, so I really don't want to lose her.
No, it's hard to replace.
Yeah, she's amazing. So,
well, I mean, again, if you get the right person, if you're with the right person, man, it's the greatest thing in the world. If you're with the wrong person, though, it's the worst thing in the world.
Well, I eat every day.
That's important.
Yeah, so having somebody who's a great cook and baker is.
So do you cook?
I do a lot. Although I didn't do much before I married Laura, because we were both working full time, and then she would come home, and I had custody of kids, and so we felt this responsibility to have nutritious meals made every day. So my wife would come home, and then she would cook. So it was like she had a second job. And I thought, I need to learn how to cook so it doesn't take the joy from cooking, when it becomes a job instead of something you love, that's sad. So I started doing that, and now we are ridiculous about it. I mean, we make everything from scratch, and yesterday I made potato chips.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, classic like potato chips or like potatoes, just
No,
chipped
like
up.
Lay's potato chips.
Okay, cool.
The thin. We had we had cooked up a beef roast with pepperoncinis and Italian seasoning made from the herbs we had grown, and beef broth, and then we shredded it to have like shredded beef sandwiches with provolone, and we made mini French bread loaves instead of hoagies. So it was all, besides the cheese, it was all from scratch. And I want to make cheese someday, but
cheese is tricky. Cheese.
So I hear.
Yeah,
but I want to have a cow and a goat. And,
oh no,
and
absolutely.
From do all of it.
Oh,
so I'm kind of insane when it comes to food.
I get it. I get it. Like I would, if I truly had my way, I'd have a goat too. Like seriously, goat and a cow. Milk for milk and cheese. Oh my god, I would
butter.
Heaven. Right? But yeah, I mean, it's really, but cheese is tricky because if you wait, because if you wait too long, it becomes like it ferments too much, right? Too little, and it's still milk. Like there's not like it's like one of those. Yes, just right, and but if you master it, man, you got yourself a market. Because honestly, cheese is like a drug. It really, really is. People like cheese. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So. When I was living in Arizona, I actually got deliveries for milk and cheese made right from the gut. Like he actually made cheese. I cannot, like, to the audience and to anybody here just listening or watching this, I cannot stress enough how awesome cheese is. Right, if it's right, like in terms, like especially like from that, because it doesn't even taste like the other cheese. Like it's richer. It's far richer. It feels so much better. I cannot even put into words how good that stuff is.
Well, we're pretty crazy about cheese. We have a lot of cheese. We don't buy shredded cheese. We don't, I mean, we get the best cheese we can, and I think normally we have between 7 and 9 cheeses in the house at a time, at any one time.
Awesome. Well, so you're definitely a food connoisseur, or definitely like it sounds to me like food's almost like your second art form.
Yes, I would say so. We grow a ton. We grow our own herbs. We grow so much stuff, and every year more. Every year, my wife's like, I don't want to grow as much as last year, but then she'll add things she wants me to try.
She's caught the what I call the bug for it. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're a great cook like my wife is, and then you get completely fresh ingredients,
doesn't even go wrong. It doesn't even compare. Like it just doesn't. Like there's nothing like it on earth. I'm actually, so from a biblical standpoint, Solomon says one of the greatest three pleasures in life is food in your belly. One of the reasons, and it's true. It is so true. It's probably the simplest pleasure on the planet, but it's the one I think everybody has something in common. Everybody enjoys something so much, and I mean, there's a reason why there are chefs and cooks that make that a career and a passion. Because, honest to God, there's nothing like enjoying a good meal. Nothing.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen. But. Wow, I didn't expect to start like this. We started from divorce. We went from I figured we do like this like lame, dry humor, but that we haven't even done that yet. And so I guess I'm gonna ask this. Like, my sense of humor comes from the fact that I've traveled a whole bunch and I've observed human behavior, and I've come to certain really simple conclusions what everybody has in common. And so I have a real sense of the absurd that way. What's the origin to your absurdity?
Well, I think there were two things. One is my mom has a fairly similar sense of humor, and so growing up around her. And then the other was when I was in school until my sophomore year in high school, I was really short and I was extremely skinny, and I wore glasses. So um, humor was my defense mechanism and how I dealt with things. I remember once in PE in junior high, there was a kid who had been held back. So it was like having an adult around a bunch of, you know, 12 and 13-year-olds. And this guy um, was a bully. I mean, he was a physical bully. And I said something smart ass to him, and he was going to kill me, or at least beat me really bad. And he said something threatening, like, I'm going to kick your ass. And I said, that's fine. Uh, if you want to, go ahead. But I got to warn you, I'm a bleeder. By the time you're done, you're going to be a freaking mess. And he started laughing, and he didn't touch me. He
Yeah.
beat up some other kids that day. And I got through a lot of, I was an awful kid. I was not nice to people in grade school, junior high, or high school. And yet nobody ever touched me. I'm stunned. I mean, my dad used to say, man, it would really be helpful if somebody kicked your ass. I think that would be great for your attitude. But nobody did.
A little humility goes a long way. So I remember in history class, way back in like my grade 8 history class, my teacher would tell the story of one of these explorers that would actually got caught by the Indians and tied up and about to die, about to get killed. So what he did was he told jokes. Right, and there's some things that are universal about life. Right, humor is universal. Humor is a huge universal language. It was so funny. They got him laughing so hard, he escaped because they couldn't tie the ropes hard. And it's like he just escaped.
I had something similar happen when I was very young. My dad had a headache or something, so he was trying to sleep, and my mom kept telling my older brother and I to be quiet so he would be able to sleep, and we did not be quiet. And she got mad, and she was gonna. This sounds awful, but she would discipline us by hitting us with a wooden spoon, like a cooking wooden spoon. And so I went in my room and I grabbed some comic books and stuffed them down my pants in the back so that I would have some cushion. And I think she was actually just going to spank me, but she pulled back her hand to spank me, and she saw all the comic books sticking there, and she started laughing.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing, and we're laughing so hard. I'm crying. I'm laughing so hard, and I'm thinking, brilliant. I'm scot-free. I'm out of this. And then she didn't beat me or anything, but she spanked me. And so it was quite a surprise because I thought I was home free. So I did the same, or I tried to do something similar, but didn't work out.
My parents used the wooden spoon as well. I almost never got it. My sister got it all the time. All right, because I was a quiet kid. I would you give me something to do, I do it. I wouldn't I was really easygoing. And my sister just at that time, you give her 5 minutes alone in the house, she just would turn into chaos. Just her nature. So she needed some boundaries somewhere, or else she'd rule the house. So eventually she knew she could get the spoon. So what she did, she took all the wooden spoons in the house, all of them, and she hid them under her bed. It was amazing. So amazing, actually, she didn't get touched. It's one of those things. I think, again, humor is one of the most disarming things. Like, if you can laugh with somebody, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to look at them as someone like an adversary. It's much easier to look at someone as a friend, or at least someone you can relate to.
I had a different strategy as a child. I was more of an evil genius. I had a brother who was 5 years older than me, and both our parents worked, and so we would basically roughhouse and fight and cause trouble until something broke. And as soon as something broke, then we would unite to try and cover it up. And there was one where I think we broke a window, and I went downstairs and he went to his bedroom, and I heard my dad come home, and they always said, we never tested this out but my dad always said, if you just tell me what you did, you won't get in as much trouble. If I have to find out, then you're screwed. So I sat in the basement, and I heard him come home, and I heard my brother come out and them greet each other, but say nothing else. And as soon as my brother went back in the room, I went upstairs and I said, hey, did Sean tell you what happened? And so even though I was 50% at fault, Sean got all of the trouble for that.
Oh,
and
sure.
That was my strategy. Evil was my strategy.
It wasn't evil. Your brother wasn't smart, so your brother should be big brother's natural inclination is to be protective, but well,
not every big brother.
But here's the thing: you sold me down the river once. It's like, okay, I'm onto your game. I'll just beat you to it. Because if I'm going to go down anyway, I'll make sure you get the brunt of it.
Luckily, he wasn't as smart as you.
Yeah.
And we're still not friends to this day in our 50s, So.
Well.
He's a grudge holder.
Yeah, well, that would, look, I mean, my sister got me in plenty of trouble too. But I mean, it's just one of those things I can hang on to that. I can look at the fact of like the person I got in my life, and I love my sister very much. It sounds like in your case in particular, you may have been a little too evil for your own good, and your brother. There's that, but there's also just the fact that maybe your brother should have been just a little smarter. Just a little.
I will tell him that later.
If that's what you want, I mean, you can rub it in at this point, but I mean,
we don't talk. We don't talk anymore.
Yeah.
I will say, I was also similarly evil to my parents, and I've apologized like a million times. I think they've forgiven me. But,
sure.
I mean, I make them a lot of food.
They have forgiven you. They just at this point, you're guilty. Because you're guilty, it doesn't matter how many times you apologize. It doesn't mean anything, because you're still going to feel that guilt until you actually get to the point where you can look at yourself and say, you know what? I did it. I learned from it. I was evil. I got better. I'm not that same person anymore. I can let that go. You can do that, and you're free of it.
Hey, but I can't stay mad at me.
No. I'd say anything but saying that. It's not about mad. No.
I've made it up to him. I mean, once I had a kid when I was 21, I grew up. Probably not before then, but once I knew I had a kid on the way, I did some real soul searching. I wanted to be a good parent.
You didn't want you didn't want another evil genius to haunt you for revenge. I'm sure sometimes you got it anyway, because I think all of us get it. We all see ourselves when we're kids, I'm sure, a little bit. And sometimes you're like, oh my God, this was me.
When I told my parents that we were expecting our second child, my mom said, I hope this one turns out just like you. And I was like, what an awful thing to say. I've already apologized a million times. But it was funny. She didn't mean it, I don't think. And truthfully, my kids were nothing like I was. I mean, my ex told me once, she said, you're mad at one of the kids, but they're not nearly as bad as we were as teenagers. And I said, well, that's setting the bar really low. I expect more from them than us. We were awful kids. And yeah, no, mine, I've been very lucky compared to the unfortunate luck my parents had to have me. But now, though, to be fair, there's 4 kids and I'm the only one that pays any attention to them. So,
Well,
I'm the good one now.
Yeah.
Hope all my brothers watch this.
Yeah.
They won't. They don't care.
Well, no, it's where life goes to, right? I like sometimes relationships just go. Like my mom is not close with either of us, my sister or myself. She just one day decided to stop talking, and it's just that nothing I can do. Yeah, nothing I can do about that. I hope she's happy. And honestly, the reason I have that attitude is I just recognize the fact too that if someone doesn't really want to be there, then there's no point in being mad about it. They're better they're not there. Because if they were there, they would make your life hell, and that's just the way it is. So
No, I agree with that.
yeah, yeah.
That was my exact reaction to being told by my training wife that she wanted a divorce, and I was like, okay. I mean, if you don't want to be there, then
she did you
we'll go.
Like what by being like as pain. I'm sure it hurt, but I mean, because it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt, but she's also giving you a lot of respect at the same time. It's a weird thing. You love someone when you can literally tell them anything, including sometimes the things you know are going to hurt them, because at that point they trust you enough to know that you can take it, right? And they know what you're going to do. They trust you with that, even if it's not something you need to hear. They trust you with their truth, whatever that is.
Well, I would say she was right. We should not have been married anymore, and and that. Oh, geez. Oh crap. Sorry, got a message come up. But she was right. And once she said that and I started thinking about the marriage, it didn't take me long to realize she was right. And to think we both had the opportunity to be a lot happier apart. And it never got ugly. It was very as far as divorces go, it was a fun one.
Yeah. No, I mean, the relationships don't have to necessarily end in a bad space, right? They just, right? They sometimes you just recognize that they need to end, whatever they are. Almost every girl I've dated, I'm still friends with. Almost every one of them, right? It's just one of those things where it didn't work out, like in terms of that, but we're still friends and we still talk to each other, which is kind of that's a good thing. It means I did something right. So
yes, I'm not that way. I mean, of course, the women I dated, aside from my wives, were nothing. I mean, maybe 2 years, but it was knowing I had children meant I very much wanted to have a good relationship. Even though I had custody of the kids, I felt it was very important for the children that their mother and father got along. And everybody says, it's all about the kids in the divorce, but it's usually not about the kids. And I mean, I've heard a lot of horror stories, I'm sure everybody has, about people going through divorce. And we managed to avoid all that. And one of the reasons why, I believe, is I didn't ask why she wanted a divorce. When she said she wanted a divorce and that there was no change in her mind, I just said, okay. And like everybody else, if I would have asked for a list of reasons, I would have gotten really defensive and either hurt or mad or whatever. And I was like, it doesn't matter. Right now, all that matters is making sure we keep a good relationship for the children's sake, And so it worked out. I mean, obviously, my ex also had to have the same, desire, the same drive to do that. And she did. She was as good at being divorced as I was. Well, I mean, it takes both of you.
Well, she had no desire to hurt you, really. She just needed to get away, right?
She did a little bit after I wrote "You're as stupid as you are fat: How to Talk to Women," and that is something I said to her. That is something I said to her once, and so my oldest daughter liked the book on Facebook. I made a Facebook page for it, and my ex called me and said, "It's really great to see your daughter like the worst thing anybody's ever said to you." So I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah, she was in the book a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that she was, because honestly, she was a big part of your life and how you learn to deal with women. it pretty much came from probably those 13 years of experience or 15 years of experience. You learned a lot, good and bad, right?
Well, what happened is I dated a woman, maybe a year or so after the divorce, and she said a few times, you don't know anything about women. And I said, that's ridiculous. I have a great relationship with my ex-wife. I have a great relationship with my two daughters, with my mom. I'm like a genius at talking to women. And then I thought, to prove it, I will write a book. And the book became very different from what I expected. I mean, it is just awful. I mean, the guy, the person, and I had a pseudonym at them. So this character was a misogynist. He was just very politically incorrect and awful. And the things, I mean, I still laugh when I read it because I'll forget the things I put in there. They're just ridiculous. And I mean, it's supposed to be an advice book, but if you were to follow any of the advice, you'd at a minimum have awful relationships, and at worst you would end up in jail. And so, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed writing it, and I was traveling a lot at the time. So, when you're traveling, there's a lot of time at the airport and in hotels, and having something creative to do as opposed to just watching TV or playing video games was, good for my mental health. Because I mean, I was almost always in a relationship with. I mean, I was, out of the 30 some years I've been an adult, 28 of them I've been married, and then in between that I had girlfriends. And so I was never on the prowl in these cities I would be in. And so, yeah, having something positive to do was very good.
So I only know two things about women, just two. Pay attention. That's it. But it's a good one. I've been doing these interviews for a very long time, and I've noticed that for me, making eye contact, being engaged, scores me so many points. I can get away with saying all kinds of things because I'm so engaged. At the same time, right? I'm never entirely sure if what I'm saying is hidden the right way or not. I just know that I am listening and I am responding to what I'm being told. Good, bad, or indifferent. This is something I've learned. The second thing I know, this is only the second thing I know, show appreciation. That's it. Those are the only two things I know.
The other thing for me is trying to be considerate, like, and not considerate in the shallow way, but I mean to consider what would be helpful for my wife, like learning how to cook, and trying to share some of her interests, not all of them, but a lot of them. And of course, one of her biggest interests is cooking and baking, and now we do that together, and so that's I think great. We have a lot of fun. She's also a very fun person. So whereas with my training wife, if we did a project together, whether it was cooking or refinishing a piece of furniture, it was unpleasant because we would get mad at each other and blame each other. I mean, it wasn't fun. If my forever wife and I do something, even if we mess it up, we just laugh, have a good time about it. But that's nice. But it's also probably because just she's so easy to be around. It may not be my work on the marriage at all. It might just be her. I mean, she is kind of a saint. My mom has Alzheimer's, and they're almost 80, my parents, and we're gonna move in with them, sell our house, and then build a guest house and a shop on their property so we can help take care of them. And I mean, my wife is a saint. Well, I guess she's double a saint. She's a saint for being with me, and then she's a saint because she's willing to help me take care of my parents, which is, I mean, that's a big deal. That's and especially somebody going through the decline with Alzheimer's. I mean, that's a lot of rough times, and she's pretty amazing. My wife is
No,
yeah, I'm very lucky.
she's awesome. She'll be able to like. I don't want to. Wow, my grandfather had dementia at the end of his life, and I still remember my last conversation with him because it was a happy one. I had him laughing, and then we were having a good time, and then he called me my dad's name, and he stopped because he knew it was wrong. He couldn't. It took
Oh
him a
wow.
minute. Yeah, he took him a minute. It took him a minute, but he knew I wasn't Tony. I was Josh, and it ruined it for him a little bit because he knew. Right, he got so caught up, and I still remember this conversation so vividly because I got a real sense when this conversation was done. We hung out and we had a great time. I had a sense that this might be the last time I see him. It wasn't my last conversation with him, but it was the last time I saw him. And I still remember that. I still remember watching that moment, that fragility he had. And my grandmother, I know because she, bless her heart, was taking care of him, and she was struggling some days. The hard part is, I mean, they are still your parents, but in one real sense, they're not the same person at all. They're breaking down, and it's horrifying because how you saw them is not what they are right now, and they need your help,
Definitely.
and it's terrifying actually on a lot of levels. And yeah, your wife is an awesome woman just because she's willing to do that with you. That's hard. That
Indeed.
is so hard.
Yes. The nice thing is, um, we live about 45-minute drive from my parents and about an hour drive from my wife's mom and her husband. But the two sets of parents only live 20 minutes away. So my wife will be able to see her mom and
Oh, sure.
stepdad and sister more often. And then one of her, probably her closest friend, lives maybe 20 minutes away from there. And so she'll have places she can go to get away. And
Yeah.
she's very close to her mother. And with how far away we are, sometimes it'll be a month before she sees her mom. But we go see my parents every week because we take them food. We're helping them out with chores. This weekend we put up fencing for the garden and planted potatoes and you know uh, the some of the stuff they just can't handle alone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my dad's almost 80 and my mom's not as helpful as she used to be to him. So, and they have some property and it's like a park. I mean, they just work outside all the time. So sometimes now they need help, but
Yeah.
she'll be able to see her mom every day if she wants to now, which will be very nice. And of
Yeah.
course, she'll have a way. I mean, just being able to get away, and that's part of the reason we're going is so my dad can do things and not worry about my mom at home because she gets very disoriented. She doesn't want to go to the grocery store or go with him when he goes to the doctor. She gets upset, and now she can stay there, and
Mm-hmm.
either my wife or I can stay with her. Although she gets agitated when my dad's go. It's like she'll get agitated if she goes with him, and she gets agitated when he leaves. Because when I was over there planting potatoes, he had to go meet somebody for lunch, and the entire time he was gone, she was like, is that car him? What color is our car? Is that our car? And I'm like, hey, we get to spend some time together, you and I, alone. That's nice. And she was enjoying that, I believe, but still was bothered that he wasn't there. So that's a lot of pressure for him,
Yeah.
and hopefully that'll
At least a little bit.
improve his mental health. Us being there.
It'll ease it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll.
hopefully
Yeah.
that's the plan. Plus they'll eat a lot better
They'll eat a
because
lot better, which never
my
hurts. Never
my mom
never
can't
hurts.
cook anymore. She can't read, and she can't remember, if it calls for like 3 cups of flour, she has no idea how many cups she puts in. So she doesn't cook anymore. He's like a just add water kind of guy, so that's why we take him so much food. But now it'll be even more so. Every meal they'll get good food. Although when we were talking about that, my dad's like, "We'll just have to go out to eat more often." And I'm like, "What? How?" And he goes, "No, I don't mean it like that. I mean, I don't want you to feel pressure that you have to cook all the time. So we'll go out to eat more often." I'm like, "I don't want to go out to eat. I think our food is really good, and I feel like a pioneer. Like I grew this
No,
food, then I
totally.
cooked it. There's a great sense of accomplishment."
But if I do offer this small thing, something to consider. Up to
Sure,
you do what you want to do.
I will.
If he does make the offer to take you out to eat as a thank you,
Of course.
take him out on it at least a couple times.
Sure.
You're not. He's actually not wrong. You will likely eat out more, but
That's probably true.
yeah, he's not wrong. But the difference is, um, something I've learned. Again, people appreciate being appreciated, but you gotta give people the ability to thank you in their own way. And for him, that might be it. No, he might do it in other ways.
Sure.
But yeah. But
No, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell my wife she should thank me more often. I'm going to share your wisdom with her.
Yeah.
So thank you for this divorce.
Yeah, but listen, if you come back with an eye, it was stairs. Totally
if I come back and I'm single, yeah.
I feel like she would just give you an example, and then you'd be like, okay, yeah, that's right. What happened? Fell down the stairs. Okay.
Well, most of the time she's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
That's how she deals with it. When I think I'm being hilarious, she's like just ignoring me.
Well, she doesn't want to encourage the monster. She just doesn't want to.
She does not want to encourage me at all.
No,
although
not in that regard. Not in that regard, anyway.
So when I wrote Children of Cathaldi and put it out, I wanted her to read it, and she's like, nah, I don't know, man. She's not really into fantasy, and then she was afraid. It seemed like she never came out and said this, but it seemed like she was afraid that if she read it and she didn't love it, that I would be mad or depressed or something. And I said, no, I don't care. Read. I just want to know what you think. So she read it, and I'm like, what'd you think? And she's like, nah, not really my cup of tea, And I said, okay. And then we're both, we do the Kindle Unlimited, So she was reading some book by some lady, and she was thinking about, do I want to read the next book in the series? And she said, no. She goes, no, Ron's book is better than this. And I'm like, oh, what damning praise. That's really, I mean, it was nice that she thought at least one book was worse than my book. But this lady had like 13 books and was making a living at it. That was her sole income. And she's like, your book's better. You just need to write more books. Done. I'll get right on it. So
that actually is encouraging. Like, I mean,
it was.
I mean, that's a it's not really a backhanded compliment either. It's a full frontal in terms of you're good at what you do. It actually is. It actually is. Right? It's not her cup of tea, and she says you're better than you're better than that person. That's. I mean.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, take it. Yeah, you know what? It's cool. Like I know. How do I put this? I know that it says something. It says something when someone doesn't like your genre but can acknowledge that you're good at it. I have a lot of romance. I have a lot of romance authors that come on the show. Now I'm not. Romance is not my genre. Like in terms of what I like to read, it's not that different from fantasy in some ways. Romance is the origin, I think, of most forms of storytelling. It's just where it has gone and where everything else has gone has allowed it to be diverse. But I do appreciate their skill because it's not an easy genre to write, right? It's not there's a the audience is very demanding. They want to enjoy whatever it is you're doing, and there's expectations that come with it, right? And you have to fulfill those, and you still got to add your own voice to it too. And I've known a lot of really great romance writers that have amazing voices when they tell stories, regardless of the genre, and they're good. They're great.
I did recently have a friend, and he doesn't like fantasy, and he listened to the audiobook, and
Okay.
he said, I don't like fantasy at all, but I loved your audiobook because you had such a well-defined voice. And so, I mean, that goes along exactly with what you're saying. And that was a very nice comment. He's a really smart guy. I was touched by that. And I have, however, had the other response where, like a reviewer who read it and said, Ron came up with a whole new way to write a fantasy novel, and it's amazing and impressive. Unfortunately, I didn't care for it. And so you could also respect that there's a unique voice and a unique storytelling method, because basically it's first person point of view, and he's just telling the story. It's not. I mean, it's very much as if you were just sitting there talking to him, and he's what one reviewer called an unreliable narrator, because he's building himself up and he's kind of diminishing what his friends and comrades are doing and accomplishing, and he's very blatant about it. And
Sure.
so it is a little different from other fantasy novels, but yeah, not everybody likes that. And I actually submitted a short story to an anthology, a fantasy anthology for beginning writers. It's kind of we'll get a bunch of beginning writers together, we'll have a few established writers, and it'll help you newbies out, right? Great. So I submit it, and I thought that my story being funny and different would be a benefit during this process. Like, I mean, a lot of fantasy stuff is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And instead it was, yours is too different. And so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
You're talking to a guy that writes epic poetry. You're talking to a guy that literally is writing and drawing his current book. So I know that sometimes when you do take chances and take chances that you're not going to hit necessarily a more traditional audience. Definitely. Not all my books I'm ever going to write are for a more traditional audience. But I mean,
so far none of mine are.
Yeah. Oh, I could like thing is I know I could like the current work in progress, the one I'm not writing and drawing, is closer to something that would fit on a traditional marketplace. It's closer because I'm not going above and beyond. Like, there might be some things that I like doing in books in there, but it's more of straightforward. I'm writing a novel, telling a story kind of deal.
Well, this is an interesting topic to me, something I think about a lot, because the guy that got me back into writing, he was doing the NaNoWriMo month a few years ago, and he posted about it on Facebook, and I'd never heard of it, and I thought, well, that sounds like fun, and I'm kind of working on what I was kind of working on Children of Cathaldi, because I'd written it like 25 years ago as third person with a different character as the main character, and didn't love it. So I kept trying to rewrite it over the years. Just, a couple hours every few years I would work on it, and I never liked it until I switched the point of view and tried something very different, and then I loved it. But he wrote a lit RPG trilogy, and he had so much more success than I did. And then he approached it as a business, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, these what can I do to make more money so I can do this as a living and support my family? Because he's got like 5 kids. He has a lot of family to support. And he started writing a children's series. He's on the 10th one now, and mm-hmm. And he had a month. Last month, I believe, and he earned almost $8,000. Sure. And that's without getting depressingly into my details. That's a lot more than I do. But I made the decision. I'm going to write what I want to write and what I enjoy writing. And if there's success, great. But I recognize that I'm not writing to market. I am not tailoring this to the reader. I'm writing what it is, and hopefully, I know there's a niche audience out there. The tricky part is just trying to find the people who would like my sense of humor and get them exposed to it because you know
there are more people into your humor I think you give credit for, but you got to look at what authors fit that. Humorous books that I really, really dig are stuff like the Flashman series. That's a funny book, but also it's got some cool little sides. There's, Ailey Martinez. I'm a big Ailey Martinez fan. He's a cool dude. He actually followed me on Twitter, which I think was really, really
oh, nice.
cool.
That's cool. Very cool.
And and occasionally I listen. I read him. He's a smart guy, very smart guy. But the point is, right? There's all these different humor books. There's Tom Holt. There's Terry Pratchett. There's Kurt Vonnegut. There's so many people that have their own wit and witticism. Humor is tricky in the sense that everybody gets tension. Not everybody has the same sense of humor, right?
Yes, and I will say that the audiobook for Children of Cathaldi, they got such a great sarcastic narrator that I feel like it's much harder to miss the humor on the audiobook because he did such a great job capturing the character than it is sometimes on the page.
But
it's not necessarily as in your face. So I was really happy with the audiobook that came out.
So sometimes I think about that too when I construct the story is what's it going to look like on the page? What's it going to sound like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I go out and made it be funny. My first novel, The Cloud Divers, got a certain sense of humor to it because my main character is a coward, and cowards are very fun to write. It's also really easy when you have a cowardly character, right? Not to take them so seriously. It's it's easy to do. When your character's a protagonist in a main story with some like gravity to it, it's harder. It's not impossible. I think one of the best people, I've mentioned this on another podcast, one of the best writers I know that does this exceptionally well, that balance of silly and serious, is Peter David. Peter David's incredibly good at it. He's a comic book writer. He's known as a comic book writer, but he's written for television. He's got his own novels out there. They are both intensely funny, but also very, very, very serious. Like he can do both. Like, man, I gotta get Peter David on the show someday because that'd be cool.
Right? I wrote his name down. I'm gonna check him out.
Yeah, no, he's most well known in comics for his Incredible Hulk run, but he wrote Incredible Hulk for 12 years. Like he wrote it for a very long time. Oh yeah,
wow,
dude has written a lot of comics, but he's also done stuff for Babylon 5. He's done some stuff for some other stuff. He's got some of his own novel series out there. Like he is criminally underrated as because he straddles that line so well. Another person I read that kind of does that very well is Terry Moore. He's a graphic novel, but he's mostly for graphic novels. He has this ability to be incredibly down to earth with his humor. He's got a certain down to earthness that I really, really dig. But he can also write that. He can write gritty horror. He can write superhero. He can draw it. He's amazing. Like he's an incredibly talented individual. And I look at him and I'm like, yeah, it can be done. And there are audiences that want it. But I guess then the question then I have for you is your character popping on the page? Because if you know that your style of humor, right, can catch on because you have a dry wit to you. Dry wit isn't always the easiest thing to put on the page either. When it's dry, true. It's not the flashiest thing. But the thing is, I think if you're gonna have that balance, then the main character has to have a certain dynamism to him. So you can actually play it both ways. Another person that does it kind of well is Jim Butcher.
Oh yeah, no, I love him. Uh,
Yeah.
so okay, the character to some people, the main character, Dirk is his name, um, is
Good
not
name.
likable, and I think he's very funny, and he is loyal to his friends, and he is trying to save the world. You know, I mean, yes, he expects some rewards from that. You know, in terms of female companionship and free drinks. You know, but he I think he is likable.
Okay.
However, some people have read it. I mean, the same way some people will read a book, and if the first line has the F word in it, then they're done. You know, there's
Oh yeah.
certain triggers for them. And I read somebody. I was on some Facebook group where writers were putting samples out, and people were commenting on them, and that was one person's response. I stopped reading this after the first sentence, and I get it. Some people aren't gonna like the sense of humor. Some
Sure.
people aren't gonna like the main character, and in one comment I got, uh, from, and all I put up was like the first few pages, and one guy wrote, "This character is awful." You know, I mean, and it isn't like he's growing up and there's some development arc in it. He tells us right at the beginning that the events of this book are over. You know, and he's writing it, you know, from the future. You know, I mean, and so he's still a dick. You know, he's still an awful person. And I loved it so much that I used part of it in the beginning of the book, of each of the books in the trilogy. The main character addresses the audience a little bit, and in the second book he says, "Look, I've read the reviews, and it isn't making me like people anymore." And so he kind of goes through some of the comments, and some of them I made up, but some of them were real comments from people about the book, and he responds to them. It's a little meta, I guess, but I enjoy it. And so that guy, one of my favorites, cranky old man, but I really did enjoy what he had to say.
Oh, it can be fun. Like it can be fun. It can be fun making something that's an unlikable character. Like you can make an interesting unlikable character, but that's hard to do. There are people that do it very well. One of my favorite authors' friends I know that does it incredibly well is Chris Mars. She's amazing at it. Like she's fantastic at it. Her debut, man, the name of it escapes me because I really enjoyed it. She's so good at it. But all those characters weren't. There's nothing likable about any of them. But knowing. So here's the thing, right? This is where I think this is a decision you make as a creator. I like likable. I like characters I like. I have to respect the character I'm writing. I don't necessarily have to like them, but I have to respect them. If I have had friends who were dicks, who got with other people, not their friends group. They were dicks. They were bullies. They didn't have necessarily always the best qualities as human beings, but but there was something like that was very 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 laudable, right? It played to the expectation. It played to the expectation that you kind of want. Like if you're the good guy, if you're the protagonist in the story, I have to have a reason to root for you. And if I
Agreed.
don't like you, it's not a deal breaker, but it definitely makes me go, why should I care?
Right. I think there's a threshold,
Yeah.
and that for each of us, it's different. And
Yeah.
so, like, I don't care about profanity in
Oh yeah.
books or movies, but there is a certain point where even I go, well, this is just cheap. You know, I mean, write some other words as well. And so if that threshold is there for how likable the character has to be, or just the type of person he is, there's plenty of people who have read it and loved the character. Even some well-known authors have really
Sure.
liked him. But I enjoy most when people don't like him. not. I mean, reading those reviews is fun. I want people
Yeah.
to like him, and I would prefer everybody loved everything I wrote, of course. I mean, that's every
Absolutely.
author. But I do get a perverse enjoyment out of these people just thinking he's awful when I think he's not so bad. I mean, when I was younger in high school and junior high, and I told you I was mean to people, I still think I was likable. I had friends. I mean, it wasn't that everybody hated me. And so I give Dirk the benefit of the doubt. I love
Oh
him
yeah.
and I forgive him. I can't stay mad at that guy either,
Well, no,
me or him.
you have a soft spot for him. I mean, I can
I
tell you
do.
do. Like you
Oh,
do.
yeah.
Like because partly, I think there's a tiny part of you that sees yourself a little bit into there, like the cranky old man, get off my lawn.
If
Right?
I had gone wrong, then I
Yeah.
would be Dirk. I mean,
Yeah.
if,
So I
if a
mean,
lot of things hadn't happened, maybe if I'd never had my first child, maybe I'd never had any kids, I would have turned into him. But I was not as bad as him. I mean, never I never was sexist, and he's not racist because there's multiple races of humans in my world, as well
sure.
as like elves and dwarves and he's not racist, but but he talks about race, and sometimes not in a very politically correct way, to the point where yeah, I mean, and I was not that. I mean, I come from a mixed race family, and I mean, you if you're exposed to that growing up, I mean, you just aren't. I was born in
I
San Francisco. My family had you know gay and lesbian friends as I grew up. So it's just hard to be prejudiced when you've had all these people in your life. It's it. I suppose you
it,
could still do it if you really wanted to, but Dirk
well,
comes off as very biased about things and they're not things I share, but I think they're funny, which is
I
tough
think
right now in the comedy environment, like stand-up comedians talking about a lot of things that they can't, we just can't say anymore. And I don't buy any of that.
that's a really okay. So that's an interesting one with me, like that
Oh,
one, because so there are some things. So my dad and my uncle are both grew up in the ghettos of Detroit in the '60s. I'm going to tell you right now, the language that was described to them as kids and what we heard even in the '80s and '90s is considered tame compared to what they grew up with, right? I,
wow.
it's not, but because you're in a rough area, like you're in a rough area, life or death, everybody's poor, no one gives a shit. I'm very aware of that mentality. That mentality is still there in the rougher areas. It's not advertised, but it's there, right? All of which I've seen. So I've seen that. I've seen the other extreme where it's so politically correct that people like literally you can literally hear them squeak as they walk. I can literally I've seen that end of the spectrum as well, and everything in between. The truth of the matter is I've seen the whole world has biases and slants. The nature of intelligence is to recognize difference. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's the nature. Like we see things, we look at what's different. It's just that's how the brain's wired. Now, wisdom is moving past those differences. But is it right? Right. That's pretty much like that's the difference. But that's just how it works. Racism still exists in the world. It is going to exist long after you're gone, because it's been again. We are trained to look at what's different, and how that evolves going forward is going to it changes all the time too. We look for new ways to divide ourselves. Sometimes it seems to me.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
There's also a lot of religion or religious dissension and trouble in my work, because like most people I think about those issues, um, and then put them into my writing in a weird way, both
sure.
the fantasy stuff, but I mean religion is a big driver in my books, but in the first trilogy at least, and then but even in a lot of the just humorous stuff I write is about religion. I have a series of short stories called the Girl Child Stories. Nobody has a name. Everybody's just described. Their name is their description. little boy next door teacher, you know what I mean? And basically the reason those stories came about is I was sitting in class one day thinking about, well, what do atheists tell their kids when they're growing up? You know, how do they teach them? And so it's stories imagined from, you know, hopefully for humorous effect about what atheists would tell their children. And then there's like a character, agnostic substitute teacher, agnostic sub, and so the kids talk about what their parents say in school. So you know, and I can't help it. You know, you think about things, and then you think of a funny take on that, and then it becomes a project. So, but they're not all like that. I mean,
No, 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 no.
there's other stuff.
I think what we're pointing out here is that, like, white. That's the wrong word. Let's do this again. Pretending
You can fix this in post.
No, I wouldn't. Polishing your story that doesn't there isn't differences in politics, religion, race. Like, our world is built on differences, right? It's all in how we present them. That's the thing. Like, we're trying to evolve the correct way to present these things, and right, and that's tricky because humor, if when used correctly, can actually point out the flaws in the system. Make you think about how things work.
Yes.
Right?
Although I scrupulously avoid giving any serious advice about anything. You point out the issues, but then I'm never like, so we need to do this. I don't do that. And I will say there is a difference between, you know, hateful comedy and pointing out things. You know, I mean, you could be funny without being hateful. And besides, you're as stupid as you are fat. That has some hateful stuff in it.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, just the title is kind of hateful. But you know, I certainly don't try to be hateful, and that's not the goal. And I think in every other work of mine besides that one, I mean, Dirk is not hateful. He's just a jerk. I mean, you know. Although I had one guy, one commenter said, because I put it up on Royal Road for a while. You're familiar with Royal Road?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you post your stuff and it's free, and it's really just to get feedback, you know, before you put it out on the market, or at least that's what it was for me. And one guy commented that he didn't like the word jerk being used in the description of the book because it was a modern day word. And my attitude to that was, you know, this is a fantasy novel. Whatever I say is how they talk. You know, I mean, it's not. I'm not writing a medieval story and it needs to be accurate, or a Roman, you know, an ancient Roman story where everything needs to be accurate. It is what I say it is. And there's just no better way to describe it, at least to me, in my mind. And I don't love making up curse words and you know, well, I want the word to be jerk, but I'm going to call it a flurf, you know, and that's the insult in my world. I don't get into that so much. Although it doesn't bother me when I read people who do. I just don't want to do it.
No, it's not necessarily strength as a writer either. Like, you know, you look at some fantasies are terrible at naming their stuff too. Like, I mean, but the standard we're going at, this is the one thing Tolkien's still far and away ahead of the curve on. He literally came up with a different language just for his fantasy series.
Yes, that guy was amazing.
That's genius on a level that, like, most, like, I mean, look at Robert Jordan. He researched cultures so that every part of the world there was a different voice to those cultures to such a degree sometimes that the story sometimes got lost in the voice, right? That, I mean, sometimes, but he was so good at making it feel like you were in a different place, different world. That was Jordan's genius.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
I do want to warn your viewers not to be looking for genius in my work. If you only read genius stuff, don't read my stuff.
So I
That's a
can
high
I
bar.
can I accuse you of literature? You saying I can't accuse you of literature?
Yeah. Yeah, that well, at least my fantasy stuff. Maybe in some of the other stuff. Although probably no. No, there's just no.
That was my favorite line in Harry Pratchett's like biography for a long time. Occasionally he gets accused of literature.
Oh,
Occasionally.
that is nice. I like it.
It's really good. I thought that was the
It's
well.
never happened to me up to this point. I
Not
mean, I've
so.
had people say they loved it, but they've never said,
Well,
"What a fine example of literature you have produced."
but you might someday. Like
You
like
never know. Sure.
my ultimate praise, the praise I really hope for someday, is your work was art, man. That's what I want to hear
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Um, that's beautiful. But the ultimate praise I want to hear is oh my God, we want to make a movie or a TV show out of that. Let us give you truckloads of money. That's where
That's business goals. No. That's
that
business.
would be well,
That's,
that would be the praise I would like to hear.
no. I think we're using like
I get what you say.
the wrong sense. The praise you want to see.
I
That's
don't care if
what you want
anybody
to,
ever says my stuff is art. I do
yeah.
like people saying they loved it. Although for me more, it's like I laughed. I really laughed reading
No,
that.
I mean,
That's the feedback I like the most.
but
I haven't written anything serious. I mean, I tried in the first draft of Children of Cathaldi, and I didn't like it. I mean, I liked it. I didn't love it. And you don't want to write something and not love your own thing you
oh yeah,
wrote.
oh absolutely.
I mean, that as soon as that happens, you're like, well, this is not getting shown to people. At least for me, that's how it is.
Writing
I want
is
to love it, and so yeah, I since I haven't written anything serious, and I don't know if I ever would. Up at this point, when people tell me they laughed, that's my favorite. And I had that friend that got me into writing, who wrote the lit RPG and then the children's books. His name's Robert Billiou, great writer. I recommend him to everybody who's a child or who likes lit RPG. We were reading each other's stuff as we were writing, to give feedback, and that was always the thing that made me the happiest, is when he said, I laughed out loud at this. It caught me off guard and I laughed out loud. I love that. And
great.
that's the greatest praise for me.
No, it's great because it's a feeling. Like that's what you were going for the whole time.
Agree.
Yeah, right. That reaffirms you that you've done the right thing, that you did what you were supposed to. You're not necessarily the guy that's going to write that serious literary book, right? But you might be the guy that writes the book that Terry Pratchett or Tom Holt or Kurt Vonnegut. Like you're in that vein, right? Doesn't mean
Right.
you're at that level. We're not. I'm gonna right. But that's the vein you're going into.
I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I have like a million well, maybe not a million.
Sure.
I have many projects that I have written a treatment of, because one of the things your mind does when you're writing, when you get to a part that's tough, is it comes up with new projects to work on that would be more fun, right? And so I stop what I'm doing and I'll write a paragraph or a page or whatever, and then throw it in the file. I have a folder of just writing project ideas, and there is a trilogy of serious, a coming of age novel, and then I don't know. Well, the one would be high school, then college, then adulthood for this character, and it would be serious stuff. I mean, there'd be not to say there wouldn't be funny parts, but the goal wouldn't be to write a funny book like a Vonnegut novel. It would be to write a book more like Catcher in the Rye. There's some hilarious stuff in there, but it's not a funny book. It's a serious coming of age novel. I don't know if I will ever get to those, because that's intimidating, and they're there's so many things I want to write on. I go through the list and I pick what I want to do. And I'm committed to trying to I'm committed to making the Cathaldi Chronicles as successful as they can be. And maybe that the niche market for them is very small. I don't know, until you make the effort. But I love it so much. I mean, I have quite a bit of it planned out. There's the initial trilogy, there's a story arc there, and then there's going to be a book or two of short stories written by me and other people, and then I want Dirk to become um, like a detective, like he's writing, murder mysteries with him as the detective in the world I've made with a lot of the characters that have come out through it. So, it's just stuff I want to do. And
Yeah.
so we'll see what other stuff happens along the way.
So, have you ever read Christopher Steshy's The Warlock in Spite of Himself?
I don't believe so.
I think for you, that's probably the path you'd want to go down.
All right, I gotta write this down because
Yeah.
the Warlock in Spite of Himself.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
I get the feeling that will be where your fan base is.
Oh,
Something will tell me. Yeah, something tells me that you might be on a similar track that he was on. I could be wrong, but
well, when I tried doing some Facebook ads when I first published Children of Cathaldi, and I don't know if you've ever dealt with it, but you get to say I want, you're targeting your ads, and you can target an author, but none of the authors I picked out that were humorous fantasy authors were big enough to have that be something you could use in Facebook ads. And so I'll have to try these guys. But, like I tried Terry Pratchett, I tried a whole bunch of people. And it was disappointing because I really wanted to reach out to fans of, the people I like. And it was tough. Tough to identify that on Facebook.
What I've been quietly doing for my next few releases is I'm looking at the PR campaigns for both. I have my next two releases. One is a homage to Fahrenheit 451. That's what I'm writing and drawing.
Nice.
It's a homage to it. It's called Lights Out. Draft's written. I've written the first draft of it. It's done. Now I'm going to be doing probably some revisions for probably a few more months, but it's going to be a written thing of beautiful art and stuff. And I'm going to draw 8-bit Zelda without actually saying it's 8-bit Zelda in various forms of sequential. It's going to be kind of like also my comic debut. I'm crazy, but that's okay. Actually, that's who I am, right? But what I'm looking at is, okay, how was Fahrenheit 451 marketed back in the day? Because that's kind of what I'm writing to. How is dystopia written today for the young adult audience? How is that marketed? Okay. So what can I do in my ads to incorporate that? One of my other books is literally, I'm taking Alice in Wonderland and Greek mythology and I'm mashing them together. Alice's Pandora. It works incredibly well.
Oh, nice.
Right? I've released the first one of those already. Kind of got it out there last year because I wanted to get it out there last year. And I want to hopefully release the second one this year. And then I have another one that's it's Parker meets Quantum Leap is what it is. So I don't know if you know what the Parker novels are, but if you do, kudos to you.
I know Quantum Leap.
So it's both. It's both of those. So have you ever seen the movie Payback?
The Mel Gibson movie?
The Mel Gibson movie Payback.
Yes.
You also have seen the Jason Statham Parker movie. If you haven't, so they're the same character. And Richard Matheson did these really cool crime novels called Parker, and they're really, really good. And so I know what I tend to do is, although my ideas may seem as outlandish and out there as things like getting Alice in Wonderland, Parker meets Quantum Leap. There's also dragon slaying in there because it's just I thoroughly enjoy that concept. And then I also have like Lights Out, which is like a Tower of Babel-esque Fahrenheit 451 story. So I have these great big ideas, but I structure it with the fact that I have a sense of what the kind of stories that have been told before. I'm aware of the story I'm telling where it's been told before. So when I'm looking at creating an ad, some ads down the road is okay. How did they do it? How did
That's
these guys? How did these guys market? Now I have identified my niches, and you've. It sounds to me like you're still trying to figure that out a little bit, like what those niches are, right?
well, I would say I've identified the niche. I don't know how to reach them as well as I need to.
So
That's so you've given me a lot to think about in that regard.
yeah, well, I mean, always like it's a good place to start, right? Always look at what worked before,
Yeah,
right? Right. Look at what worked before. Not all of it's applicable, but some of it will certainly still stick because again, the interest hasn't changed. It's just diversified. That's all. Like I joked on our podcast about penguin zombie apocalypse. I've thought about how I would do that, right? Just because I again I come up with these weird and wacky ideas, but I always think about the story fundamentals about what I want, what kind of story I'm going to tell there, right? So could I do it? Yeah. You know what I'd be looking at? I'd be looking at the same guys that did the Star Wars like zombie, like Pride and Prejudice and zombie. Like that's where I would look at the how did they market their stuff. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of modeling out there. So what you always have to look at is what works and why it works, and maybe what didn't work so well. And you're gonna have to try things, and you're gonna get your ass kicked a little bit because that's
sure.
life. But
I think there is, well, and of course, I read a lot about marketing as an indie author. And one of the things I think is important is having more than one book. And that was why I stopped
okay,
advertising was, besides the cost of the acquisition of a reader, if, I mean, my Children of Cthulhu is only 99 cents. I mean, it's supposed to draw people in. So spending money on advertising when they could only buy that and they couldn't buy or read because it isn't Kindle Unlimited, but they can't get the page views for future books. That was not very cost effective.
no,
And there is also a subset of readers who don't trust indie authors to finish a series. So
which is
you put,
justified.
oh yeah,
So
definitely it's
it's
justified.
justified, right?
But so they wait around for the trilogy to be finished, and when you say book one of this series, they don't want to touch it. And so I decided, I'm going to wait. And so I've just been studying and trying to learn along with writing. And now that the third book is almost done with the first draft, um, when I get that done and then the anthology, the first anthology, then I want to get back into advertising because there's enough for people to read, to
There's
make
some
it worthwhile.
there's something to be said about quantity for sure. But
I
I'm
believe
going to
so.
make you a little challenge. More things to ponder as we wrap this up.
Okay.
Consider this: it's not just your books you're advertising; it's yourself. You're Ron L. Lahr, cook extraordinaire, self-proclaimed smartass, right? Expert on women or something to that effect. I don't know. I would never make that claim, right? Because God only knows. Most of the smartest guys I know say they know nothing. I also say that their wife is their best friend, and it's like, yeah, you better say that. but I mean, but in all seriousness, you have to constantly look at developing your relationship with your readers. One of the reasons I do the show the way I do the show, there's a lot of me out there. So whenever I release something, it doesn't matter. People will give me a look just because I've already built myself up as a platform, as a persona that people can see and know. Right? I've established a relationship with my audience. You can come see me. I'm open. I'm me. And I'm authentic. I'm not for everybody, but the people I'm for are behind me 100%. You got books to release, and I'm not saying you necessarily have to do a podcast or you have to do something, but you got to think everything you're doing, marketing, when you really sit there and think about it, is really just about establishing a relationship with your potential customers, establishing friends, making friends, and influencing people is basically what you're doing. So that means, Ron, you got to get yourself out there. That means you got to make yourself constantly be engaging in some form or some fashion. And all the while, looking at the books, you could actually start marketing once your next book comes. Like once you get to 3 books, you can start
Sure.
marketing. You could start marketing then, and it would be profitable because you have the ability, especially if you have a schedule for the next release, right? Then you can build that and build everything else. That's what people in crowdfunding do.
Well, I am hoping that having a bunch of authors involved in the anthology will magnify the marketing event because they're all going to reach out to their
Sure.
friends and family if nothing else, but then their fans. And I hope that with that magnification and then adding to it with advertising, that there'll be a nice jumpstart to what's going on. We'll see. It's also really interesting to create a world. I mean, a lot of fantasy writing is world building, and having other people write in your world that you've created and use some of the same places. I mean, one guy wrote a story where the characters are the main gods and they're interacting and making a decision that happened 400 years ago in my trilogy, but um, that's really cool. I mean, the same way it's neat to hear somebody read your book, an audiobook, or
Oh, yeah.
I've also had somebody do a short story, an audio short story. And it's so fun to be, I wrote that, I mean, it's intense to see people doing it. And I found it to be the same with reading stories in my world. I mean, one is a horror story. There's lots of funny stories, but there's also some very serious stories. Um, there's no romance in it, which would have been interesting. Um, but I really love the fact that this world I created now, there's all these different genres of stories in it. I mean, especially horror. I would have never
Yeah.
thought of that. And this guy I met who writes horror, I convinced him to write a story for it, and that's fun. Uh,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
and I feel like me being so excited about where the series is at with the anthology and the completed trilogy will make it more palatable. I mean, because marketing isn't the fun part of writing. I mean, the fun part of
Right.
writing is writing and hearing from readers who enjoyed it.
Right.
And but if I can make it more enjoyable, then I think I'll be more likely to succeed.
So
So we'll see.
I want to push back on you on that one a little bit. I think a lot of authors get intimidated by marketing,
Oh,
and I think because it's the same skills. You aren't doing anything different in marketing than you do when you craft a novel. You're telling a story. It's just the story you're telling, right? The difference is the difference is you're not just creating this meta world. What you're doing is you're excited about your series, right?
of
You,
course.
you busted your ass writing the series, right?
Eh,
You
I mean,
did.
yes, yes, I did.
You did, right?
Yes,
You worked,
definitely.
you worked hard. You're
Indeed.
excited. You're excited about it, right?
Oh, of course.
Right. You're proud of it,
I
right?
am.
You care about it.
I laugh when I read it. So, I mean,
So
it's great.
so
Everyone should read it.
so why
Well,
isn't that your campaign?
I think the medium, I mean, there's so much to learn about marketing. So, I mean, it is
Mm-hmm.
intimidating
Yeah,
in terms of the time commitment.
sure.
And then it's so easy to spend time and not see any direct results. And then, of course, when you do have results, you don't know what the results are from, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have X number of book sales or X number of page reads, well, was that from my newsletter that went out? Was it from ads? Was it if you had complete information about what was going on, that would be a lot more satisfying. But it's hard. I mean, when I was planting potatoes this weekend, and I get done and there's eight rows of potatoes, and I was like, oh, great sense of accomplishment. And I'm going to for sure get the results of those of my effort and get to eat those potatoes. And whereas, spending time on Twitter and Facebook and even things like this, doing interviews and participating in panels and writing, I do a lot of written interviews. You have no idea if it's going to help. I mean, I try and enjoy the experience and learn what I can from everything, but it is daunting. So I have a friend from high school. This guy is hilarious. He wrote a book 8 years ago, I think it was, and it was a parody of the Rich Dad Poor Dad book.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, what a great idea. And he's like, yeah. And after I finished it, I spent 8 months marketing it.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, and this is a really smart guy. And he said, I didn't accomplish shit. didn't accomplish shit. He's like, I haven't written anything since. And, and that's a shame. I mean, he's going to send me the book, and I'm very excited to read it because I think he's hilarious and really talented. And it's disappointing that that it's so hard to master for so many people, and knowing that it's like, I want to spend my time writing. That's what I like doing. That's what I love doing.
Absolutely.
So I like your way of thinking about it, and that's something I'm going to try and internalize. But so far I have not gotten the same satisfaction from marketing as I do from creating, and that if I could get there, boy, that would be awesome.
So
I mean, I would love that.
I'm going to push back on you a little bit again because I've been in gardening.
More? Oh my God!
I know, goddamn, I know. How dare I push you back and make you think some more?
You're lucky you're in Canada, or this might get physical.
Like maybe. I don't know.
Because I'm quite intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm shuddering just over here just thinking about it.
Finally.
Yeah, I know. It took a while. I'm slow. I'm Canadian. But here's the thing. You're right. The cool thing about a garden is you can physically see the results. You put your hands in the dirt and the soil. You can do cool things with plants. You can put vinegar into a potato plant. A little vinegar in the soil helps with the bacteria absorb everything that much more. So you get these big ass potatoes when they come out when it's all said and done. Things and but sometimes you can do everything right, even in a garden. Sometimes the damn squirrels eat everything. Sometimes there's this raccoon. My dad has his garden in Windsor, and in the middle of this garden was like the fattest raccoon I've ever seen in my life. He was so happy, so happy, because my dad's garden was pretty much like nirvana for him. There was just so much stuff. There's so much stuff. He couldn't eat it all, but he damn sure tried. He was, like I said, the happiest raccoon I've ever seen in my life. Like, he was like 2 raccoons. He was so big. I'm not even joking. All of which to say the same thing I'm about to say, going back full circle here, is you can do everything right even in a garden, and shit can still go wrong, and it will go wrong, and you're not going to necessarily get everything you plant. But the lesson you should learn from your garden is, even though you don't necessarily get the results you intend, and this is the result, and these are the things I've learned in this business, in this industry, is you doing things create ripples out there.
Agreed.
One of my books is going to be up for an award this year.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah. Didn't ask for it.
Luck.
Yeah, thanks again.
Well, I have a few things to say about that. One is, gardening is pretty forgiving, though. If you do some, you plant, you fertilize, you water, you're going to get something. I mean, I'm not any sort of gardening expert. I just try stuff, see what happens. And 9 times out of 10, I get some food. It's great. Mm-hmm. The other is a little story. So my dad, there's on their property, they have deer, they have rabbits, they have, all sorts of creatures that want to eat the food. that he's growing, or that we're growing really, and um, he has the humane rabbit trap. I'm like, it's a war. I'm if I, if I had a trap, it would kill the creature because it wants to eat my food, and I want to eat my food. But he's humane trap, and then he takes the rabbit 5 miles away and sets it free. Well, it rained a couple of days a year or two ago, and he couldn't tell there was a rabbit in the trap. And by the time he went out there, because he didn't have to water and it wasn't really gardening weather, the rabbit was dead. And he was really upset about it. I mean, he was very emotional about it. And my parents always talk on speakerphone, so my mom and dad are both there. And I said something like, who gives a shit? I mean, that guy is the enemy. I want that thing dead. And my mom's like, yeah, right on. And my dad just couldn't see it because I'm like, they're the enemy. I hate deer now. I hate rabbits. I hate everybody who wants to eat our food because partially I want it to be, as productive as possible. And I love when there is food to harvest. And so yeah, I get, my wife, on the other hand, is very much an animal lover, donates to animal, organizations. And like if we go see a movie and 1 million human beings die, she doesn't give a crap. And then one horse dies, or a cat, or a dog, God forbid, and she's like bawling. And whereas I saw the movie Avatar and I was like rooting for the humans. Screw the blue cat people. We need energy. Energy is important. I want that unobtainium or whatever the hell, poorly named, should have been like difficult to obtainium. I mean, it wasn't unobtainium. But I was rooting for the humans, even though they were jerks. Apparently, I have an affinity for jerks, and so just because they were doing some mass murdering, I mean, they were still people. I mean, if there is a war,
reproduction, and only one person will get that joke. But anyway, yeah.
I mean, if there is an interstellar war, I'm going to be on the side of the humans. I mean, animals. But I can only have a cow or a goat or chickens for the food they produce. I can't
yeah.
I can't kill them and then eat them.
See,
which I would.
Yeah.
Fresh food.
So, I'm going to go back
again
to the point because I do think you need to hear this, and that's kind of why I bring this up.
I don't feel like I'm arguing with you.
No, you're not arguing.
Or disagreeing with me.
No. I don't think you're disagreeing with me. I think, though, there's still a part of you that, and again, maybe you're just not ready to do it, tackle it just yet. But it is basically the last thought, I think, on this before we move on, and that's this. Authors today no longer have the luxury of just writing books in the shadows, unless you're Stephen King or J.K. Rowling. You can't write books in the shadows, and people will just buy them. We live in an age now where people can interact. I'm on Twitch. The cool thing about Twitch is there's so many great communities of people just doing incredible things all the time. And there's a lot of enthusiasm. The video game community, is a community that I think writers could learn a lot from. And one of the things I've been learning in the last few months is probably it's one of the best ways to build a community. And what we all need to do as authors, and this is maybe the way I would approach it from your perspective, build your community of people that love the dicks, the jerks, the people that right?
Yeah. I don't know if I want a community of people that love the dicks. That sounds like a different target audience.
Yeah. Maybe that's the wrong choice of words.
Yeah,
but I think you get the point.
I do, and I'm trying to build. Unfortunately, the thing I'm most comfortable with is the newsletter, and I write a long newsletter, and I do that. And the technology of you kids today is harder.
I know.
So I acknowledge I need to get there. I love the Facebook. That's how old I am. Not, not,
No,
I'm
no,
not
but
on Twitch. I'm not,
no,
I mean, half the time people talk about social media or other things that they're trying to utilize in marketing, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is,
and
so.
and honestly, that's fine. A newsletter is good enough. But at that point, then, okay, how many people do you know write funny? Like, I
How
mean,
many do I personally know, or am I aware of as
no,
authors?
personally, no. I bet you, it's not a small number.
Yeah, I mean, smaller than I wish.
Sure, oh, absolutely.
It does feel like most of the people that I'm friends with who write, or I mean, like, because that one friend of mine who wrote the Rich Dad Poor Dad, he doesn't write anymore. He gave it up. So the people who are successful aren't that I'm friends with don't write humorous stuff, which is a shame. But I mean, I'm trying. I'm working
No,
at
no, no,
building
no.
that network for sure.
Again, I'm not trying to come across like you disagree or it's just for me, just what I've noticed is that a lot of authors, in terms of marketing, whatever marketing actually is and stuff like that, um, they always equate it to sales, and I just I, and I think that's the most counterintuitive part of marketing. That actually shouldn't be the you want sales. No one's denying that, but the goal should be, I'm Ron. I'm really proud of my book. I think it's awesome. I think you're gonna love it.
I
Okay.
love that
Yeah.
sentiment because I don't know. I like to sign up for authors' newsletters and see what they do. And for a lot of indies, it's just buy my book,
Hmm.
or buy my books, buy my audiobook. I mean, there's not much to the newsletter besides the pitch for sales, or they only put it out when there's a new release or a sale or something. And I very much want to build relationships with my
Yeah.
readers. And so there's sharing about yourself and sharing behind the scenes stuff about the work. I mean, a lot of, well, actually, I write a short story that I put out, it's serialized in my newsletter. So
It's
I try
cool.
and give them things, you know, the the pitch is supposed to be, hardly any of it. It, just giving hopefully things of value. I mean, if they like the novels, then they're going to like. I mean, the short story is about Dirk as well. So, um,
Well,
I mean,
it's the best kind of marketing.
yeah,
And then what you can do down the road is you can release that as a book to charge people that not on the newsletter and as a news,
right.
right, and go, well, you know
Someday,
what? Yeah, well, why not?
yeah,
Why not?
someday, I definitely think
Yeah.
so. And actually, so I do Story Origin and Book Funnel with the Reader Magnet, the free story they get, and that's about Dirk as well. And I want to put a different one up. I want to. I feel like it's been however many months of the same story. I want to get a different one out there and appeal to different people because I mean, as you know, even just the title appeals to some people and not others of the short story. I
Absolutely.
mean, they don't know. They have to judge based on the title and the cover and maybe a little blurb if it's something
So
they want to download. So I want to do a new story, but of course I want to do a million things and I'm trying to move and I mean, like everybody, I'm busy. You know.
you can only go at your own pace, man. That's all you can do. But like I said,
Mhm.
I just wanted, like I said, we move on to wrapping up why your books are awesome and possibly made of cheese in a minute. But but the only reason I just want to put you in that mindset because it sounds like you're doing a lot of the right things anyway. I just think for you, I just think for you, it's scale, and also just accepting
Agreed.
the fact that it's accepting the fact that the goal should not necessarily. And I agree with you. Like I don't like reading newsletters where it's just about buying your stuff. I
Right.
like I want to hear about what you're doing, but I also want
Definitely.
I don't necessarily want to be throttled to death with your how do I put this with your sales jargon. I don't care.
Right.
No one cares about sales jargon. People care about people. That's just how it is. And writers have this really unique challenge. We're now a work of art. You can't draw a pretty picture and go, "Ooh, look at that," and it's awesome, right? All right,
Very true.
right. You have to get people to commit to the time. So you get, but like I said, just going full circle, and then we'll wrap up. Is you're proud of your work. You worked hard on your work. You enjoy the fact that Dirk's a jerk, and it's a fun little book.
I love it.
Right, and it's a fun little series, and that's what you got to convince people. That same feeling you get, that's the feeling you should be trying to convey to other people.
Good point.
Yeah, that's my thought. That's my thought. Okay, and then I promise, I swear to God, no more preaching from the pulpit. You don't have to even give me the collection plate money today. So it's all yours.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
I know.
What a relief.
I know. Next time. Next time. And I hope there is a next time. You're good. You're a cool dude. You're a cool dude. So, yeah.
Bless you.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. But I do think we have an interview here. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Did you have fun?
I did. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm good at this. Apparently, they tell me. I don't know. I have a supreme quality of making an ass out of myself. So.
Well, I don't know about that.
They give me an award. I must know what I'm doing or something.
That's true.
And now as I ponder what I got to do off the air, whether do I even bother going or not, because that's an interesting conundrum. I think I'll wait for more instructions tomorrow. I think that's the right answer because
it sounds like the most fun.
Yeah, well, it sounds like just call me old fashioned. I'm of the firm belief that if they have their shit together, that they'll tell me the stuff I need to know to do what I'm supposed to do. And if
that's a great point. It's not very impressive how they've handled it so far.
Yeah,
not giving you good information.
Yeah,
that's not a good sign normally.
That's a red flag. I'd rather. I'm all for an adventure, but at least tell me when and where I'm supposed to be, right? Yeah, that's off the record, ladies and gentlemen. For on the record, though, you write books. You're almost a funny guy, almost.
Thank you. Yeah. When I grow up,
one day, I'm still 12. Yes. I don't know how old you are, so
old.
So old. You're 13.
Gray hair isn't fake.
15, 16.
It's hard. It's hard earned. Well, once you have teenagers, that's when mine started going gray. But
oh my God, they're like me.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even, like I said, it wasn't even that, but they're like 10% as bad as me. I mean, I don't know how my parents' hair didn't go gray when I was a teenager. It didn't.
Because is it possible that this is just the thought before we wrap up here? Is it possible that your parents were even worse than you were?
Oh. Okay, actually, all right. So when I was a kid, my parents went away for the weekend. I was in high school, I think, probably. I must have been in high school. So I had a friend over. He lived down the street, and his mom had gone to high school with my mom in Cusick, Washington, tiny community. And they end up living out in the country, like 4 places away from us, so maybe a half a mile away. And when we went out drinking, we come back, he goes into his parents, and he's obviously drunk and tells me he wants to stay the night at my house. And they didn't know my parents were gone, but they called my parents to tell them that we had been drinking. And my parents dug through the garbage outside, the garbage cans, and found, some beer cans or something. And my mom comes into my room, storming into my room, and she's pissed. And, drinking's illegal, blah, 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 blah. And I said, oh, you're telling me that when you were in high school, you never had any alcohol? And she's like, that's right. I said, wow. I was shocked because, how can that be? But I said, well, I guess we're just 2 different people. Because she was a goody-goody cheerleader. She loved the answer that I gave her, that we were 2 different people. She slammed the door, opened it back up, and said, and clean your room. That was like, that got me. But There we are. So I don't think my mom was. She was like a goody. And
Maybe.
my
I don't
dad
know.
might have been. My dad might have been trouble. He was. He was
I don't know. See, I've known cheerleaders in small towns. They're not exactly goody. So
Well,
yeah.
she did get married. Her senior yearbook picture has her married name, you know. So I
So
mean, she wasn't, an angel, but
yeah.
apparently she was sober.
More power to her. More power to her. That's right.
Oh crap.
I really think maybe we should walk away from this before we go down
Yeah.
into rabbit holes here.
Yes, I don't want to talk any more about my mom in high school.
Well, no, you probably shouldn't. She might like. I'm no disrespect to you, but I'm probably more afraid of your mom than I am of you. Like I probably,
Well,
even in her condition, she probably could still kick my ass. So
maybe, but
maybe
the great thing, the one good thing about Alzheimer's, she won't remember this, even if she does see it, the next day. I mean, sometimes I will make jokes. My mom has a very similar sense of humor. I'll make jokes and my wife will be like, "Oh my God, how can you say that?" I'm like, she won't remember right in front of her. And she thinks it's funny. Luckily, she has a really great attitude about it. And of course, her mom had Alzheimer's. I assume I'm going to have Alzheimer's. I mean, it's not like it's a surprise. It's coming. It does run in families. And so, I mean, if you have to have it, at least you can have a good attitude about it. And
yeah,
we're blessed that she does have that. We can kid around about it, at
yeah.
least.
Done there. Well, sir, I think it's time you do the plugging of the stuff so we can wrap this bad boy up.
Okay. Please buy my books.
Okay.
There you go. There is a website, kathaldi.com, KATHALDI.com, and that'll give you links to everything, the books, the email list.
Kathaldi.com?
Yes, kathaldi.com. The website's awful, but it's free. and but it does have the relevant information to get you to the other places, Facebook and sales, and I think most importantly the newsletter. You can sign up for that there and get the free book or the free short story, the prequel. Yes, and I recommend the audiobook. If you're gonna give any of my stuff a try, I recommend the audiobook or the audio short story. Ooh, I need to put that on the website. The short story.
Probably should. That probably is a good idea. That might
it's new.
That might be the most important thing right now. But I get. You got things to do. How can people find you? How can people find you just besides the website?
Facebook.com/Kathaldi. Twitter, my handle is Lahron, LAHRRON. Those are the most. Well, I have an email account. Ron Lodell Lahr, RONLODELLLAHR, my first, middle, and last name, at gmail.com. That's my author email. So it doesn't get the normal, 50 years of junk mail that my old normal email gets. So I actually read every single thing that comes into ronlodell.lahr at gmail.com. And I love to talk to people. So, I mean, obviously, I love talking. I love talking about my writing. So please reach out.
Alrighty. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support this channel, do so by clicking the like and follow button on my Twitch, twitch.tv/JustJoshingPodcast. If you're on YouTube, I have Joshua Pantellaresco. Click like and subscribe there. I have my books. It is Poetry Month. Alice Zero is available now. Check it out on Amazon. All right. So beyond all that, guys, stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. I will see you guys on Thursday. And hopefully by that time, I'll have figured out what the heck I'm doing in this city going forward. Beyond that, stay inspired. And I'll see you guys Thursday.